What you want wants you. A calm and confident approach. This conversation is built upon Thursday's video in which we spoke of self-confidence. And we're also relating it over to last Sunday's Neville Goddard discussion in which he spoke about I am the cause. Now Neville states, all you can possibly need or desire is already yours. You need no helper to give it to you. It is yours now. Call your desires into being by imagining and feeling your wish fulfilled. As the end is accepted, you become totally indifferent as to possible failure. For acceptance of the end wills the means to that end. When you emerge from the moment of prayer, it is as though you were shown the happy and successful end of a play, although you were not shown how the end was achieved. However, having witnessed the end, regardless of any anticlimactic sequence, you remain calm and secure in the knowledge that the end has been perfectly defined. Now, this is something that we understand more so through experience. As I reflect back on my own life and through many conversations that I've had with others about their own journey to realizing their goals and visions, they realize that the acceptance of the end really does will the means. We say some way, somehow. Now, through experience, we learn these things. However, if we don't have the reference experience, then we still have faith. So Neville states, prayer, like sleep, is also an entrance into the subconscious. So if we don't consciously know how we're going to produce that result, whatever that goal may be, the business goal, the relationship goal, whatever that may be, if we don't know how we are going to get there, it's important to recognize the power of I am. What we say I am to calls upon powers within the subconscious mind to bring it into existence in ways that we might know. As Steve Jobs said in his commencement speech, you can connect the dots looking backwards. You know the way that works for you, and you can share it with others, and it may be the way it works for them. However, what we're really dealing with here is faith, realizing that there's a distinct pathway to realizing our vision. We also call this trusting. It's stated in Matthew 6:6, when you pray, enter into your closet. And when you have shut your door, pray to your Father which is in secret. And your Father which is in secret shall reward you openly. So we call upon the power of I am, what we say I am to. All and everything exists here in this moment, and it is revealed based on what we consciously and unconsciously say I am to. But it starts with the conscious, imagining ourselves at that end, which is a form of prayer, as he says here. Prayer is an illusion of sleep, which diminishes the impression of the outer world and renders the mind more receptive to suggestion from within. The mind in prayer is in a state of relaxation and receptivity akin to the feeling attained just before dropping off to sleep. We call this being calm. Now, James Allen, in his book, As a Man Thinketh, says it really well. He says, calmness of mind is one of the beautiful jewels of wisdom. It is the result of long and patient effort in self-control, essentially observing what we say I am to and identifying with our vision, both in the prayer and living in faith day by day on the journey to realizing our vision. This means if we experience something in reality, the five sensory experience, in which we seem to fear or doubt or have indecision about, we recognize that our desire, or what we desire to experience, is already in the process of being realized. That's what we're saying I am to in that moment. I am my vision. I am that person. Now, James Allen also said, a man becomes calm in the measure that he understands himself as a thought-evolved being, for such knowledge necessitates the understanding of others as a result of thought, and as he develops a right understanding and sees more and more clearly the internal relations of things by the action of cause and effect, he ceases to fuss and fume and worry and grieve, and remains poised, steadfast, and serene. Now let's relate this over to the next part that Neville speaks of, where he says, your prayer must be answered if you assume the feeling that would be yours were you already in possession of your objective. Now we can do this instantaneously in the moment right now. By going beyond the evidence of the five senses, realize that the five sensory evidence, this experience, is a result of past imaginal acts. Whether you consciously did it, or you reconfirmed in your own imagination what you saw on the screen of space in reality, and assumed it to be a certain way, and thus continued to play the same cycle again. And so, if we have challenge with this, he recommends prayer, or in state akin to sleep, imagining, by shutting out the five senses, going into your imagination, and recognizing that you are that person right now. Now, if we relate this over to Thursday's video, you see yourself behaving confidently in your imagination. You perhaps see others commenting to you about how confident you are now, how expressive you are right now, how what you want wants you back, how everything you touch turns to gold. And right then and there, we accept that as an accomplished fact, and we realize, as he says here, the subconscious finds the means for its attainment. So again, Mark 11:24, whatsoever things ye desire, when ye pray, believe that you have received them, and ye shall have them. The only condition required is that you believe that your prayers are already answered. Now, this is the art of prayer. I also have done another discussion on prayer. I'll put a link in the description to it, which says the same thing. And I also discuss the cause within is what we say I am to. And we could say I am to anything. We could say I am to whatever experiences that we're having and relate it over to whatever we want. What we identify with as a result of what we say I am to, which also is what we imagine. We definitely can say it, speak it in our mind, speak it into existence. We can also imagine it, or as he says, assume it in a way that it is right now a present fact in imagination. And from there, the subconscious rearranges reality to reflect. So it appears as a journey to the destination. He says, the perfectly disciplined man is always in tune with the wish as an accomplished fact. So living right now as the wish being an accomplished fact. So again, calmness of mind is one of the beautiful jewels of wisdom. So if you look back at your personal experiences and you have conversations with others, which is why I always recommend having conversations with others who have produced the results that you would like to also have, and observe their train of thoughts, how they communicate about things, learn about their beliefs, their interpretations, their perspectives, their paradigms. And what you'll find is patterns of thinking. And one of the patterns of thinking that you'll find is the obviousness of achieving that end result. And what we want to do is have that same obviousness. Now, this can be done through an instant moment of commitment in the mind. Whatever you're experiencing that you feel reactive to, let's say you decide that you're going to also make YouTube videos and you're about to put out a YouTube video. But you start to think about certain thought processes like, will people accept me? Is this something that people really want to hear? See, what we're doing at that point is we're assigning five sensory interpretation to that particular act. And that's fine, because when you release from those interpretations by simply going into your imagination and say, how am I really? I really am the person that can authentically express in a way where it resonates with others. And there are many others that want to receive what I have to say. What I want wants me back. What I want to do is express. And I'm expressing so that others can receive my own experience, my own understandings, and apply the information to create change in their lives. What I want wants me back. And then when you open up your eyes, you realize that you are compelled now to make the video. You have successfully released from certain kinds of interpretations in regards to the five sensory experience from the perspective of past ideas. Maybe you accumulated those ideas somewhere. We identify with that, then we shall see that as our experience. However, we can choose to identify with anything. And the suggestion has been made to identify from the perspective of love. So, what would you imagine would happen from the perspective of love? What you love loves you back. Now, one stays committed like this to the imaginal scene by conscious reflection, as James Allen articulated, cause and effect reflection. If they start to do certain things and experience certain kinds of convoluted stress-based thinking, such as the ones I brought up just a moment ago, they realize that those are just trains of thought. They are transcendent to the thought, and they can say, I am too, anything, from the perspective of love, and they will experience that in the moment. Now, through the repetition of doing this, you change and you become calm. He says, the perfectly disciplined man is always in tune with the wish as an accomplished fact. He knows that consciousness is the one and only reality, that ideas and feelings are facts of consciousness and are as real as objects in space. Therefore, he never entertains a feeling which does not contribute to his happiness, for feelings are the cause of the actions and circumstances of his life. So a person desires to express, and they find themselves perhaps having internal resistance. One of the best things to do at that point is to just say, that's fine. So I have some fear, so I have some internal resistance, so I have some stress. Release from the identification. Now, from that acceptance, we have calmness of mind. And in that calmness of mind, we can close our eyes if need be. And in our mind, in our imagination, we say, I am the person that expresses confidently, that reflects as others receiving what I have to offer, and they benefit from what I share, and they reciprocate it via their behaviors, their body language, and their engagement in their communication, or something like that. What a person will notice is that when they identify with that train of thinking, that's exactly how it's going to play out. And so it's important then to value the journey and see it as valuable as the destination, because the journey reveals things about ourselves. And this is perhaps one of the reasons why he says, because of this tendency to rely on the evidence of the senses, it is necessary to shut them out before starting to pray, before attempting to feel that which they deny, or so the appearance is denial. As we continue down this journey, we'll recognize that reality is not rejecting us unless we believe that it does. Reality is not denying us. It's playing out the theater. It's rearranging to reflect our vision. Now, these are interpretations. These are interpretations that I have, that I've identified with more so. And these are interpretations that I've had conversations with successful entrepreneurs, those that have achievements they wanted in their life. And although they might not have exactly said it that way, what they were saying was implying just that what the reality was for them was their vision, and that this world, some way, somehow, is going to rearrange itself in known ways, as in they know what to do. They know what not to do. We call this Wu Wei. Or they might not consciously know exactly how it's going to play out, but they trust, they have faith that some way, somehow, because they're able to look beyond the evidence of the senses, which is interpretation, recognizing that what is here on the screen of space is a result of past imaginal acts. And so they have the power now, because all power is now, to identify with what is true by seeing their five sensory experience, the people, the environment, the circumstance, and information, as inspiration and in harmony and in contribution to their vision. They're able to see it. How so? I remember I even had this opportunity to sit down beside John Mackey, who was the founder of Whole Foods. And I asked him a few questions, and I noticed that beyond the responses that he gave, there was a certainty and calmness. Now, one can say, well, the calmness could come from his experience, but what we're recognizing is that we seek it first within, and we become it first within, and then it expresses. So realize that whenever you see somebody having the results that you desire, that they first went there in imagination. This further reveals the power of imagination, and it allows us to remain poised, steadfast, and serene, which is essentially recognizing that whatever is being presented here in the five sensory experience is some way, somehow in contribution to your vision. Now, I believe that the conversation that him and I had was also in contribution to my vision, because I was very fascinated on how people think who have produced a radical amount of success in their life in different areas. And I also recognize that in my own goals and my own achievement in the entrepreneurial space and different areas of my life, that I was essentially doing the same thing. We all do the same thing. It's what we say I am too. It's what we imagine. So prayer is something that we could work with that will allow us to shut out the five sensory interpretations, go into imagination, and say the prayers or imagine the scene. And the acceptance is the feeling of the wish fulfilled. And that right there is then left up to the subconscious, the infinite world within, to some way, somehow bring it into realization. So if a person doesn't have a lot of reference experience, they can benefit from the reference experience of others. If a person does not have that much reference experience, and instead is maybe riddled with thoughts such as the ones I have here, but it isn't for me, because I will be abandoned, because I can't get what I want, because I'm afraid of being rejected, because the facts say this or that, because no one understands me. These are all interpretations, things that we're adding to what we say I am too. So a person might say, I am a successful person. Then 5 seconds later, or throughout the day they're thinking and they're identifying with, but success is not meant for me. Or I want the ideal relationship, but they're thinking, but I will be abandoned. These are thought processes. Don't need to shame ourselves for having these thought processes. We don't need to identify with them anymore, but if they seem to be recurring thought processes, then we can go in and do the subconscious mind work and watch the almost 2-hour video I did on the power of the subconscious mind, 2022 Interpretations by Joseph Murphy, to help us with that, change those beliefs around. As a result of changing those beliefs around to more accurate, empowering, true beliefs in relation to the ideal, the vision, what we notice is we have less of those thoughts or none of those thoughts because it's so obvious. Or here's another one, because I can't get what I want. Well, perhaps in past experiences, you had this idea formulated, our own self-imposed thinking, that what we want doesn't want us back. It's important to reflect back and see where we got these ideas from. What we find is that intuition in that particular moment when we were identifying with that idea, which we can call limiting or disempowering, was actually sharing with us, you know what, this doesn't resonate. But for some reason, we didn't listen to ourselves and understand. We're understanding it more so now, the power of the subconscious. And as a result, we began to identify with that kind of thinking, and then it started to play out in the theater in our life. These are thought processes that we've identified with. So we can release from those thought processes. They're just thought processes because if you speak with others who have the calmness of mind to a high degree, maybe in certain areas, maybe they might not have it with everything, but in certain areas, the areas that they're proficient in, the certain areas where they're demonstrating a high level of wisdom, you'll find that they say things like, well, I want it, I got it. If I want it, I'll get it. I don't feel like going after it, but if I felt like it, I'll make it happen. That's because they have what James Allen says, calmness of mind, which is one of the beautiful jewels of wisdom. Go back into prayer and identify with the vision, because prayer is a form of affirmation. Stimulate I am identification with, without the added aspects like, but it's not meant for me, but I can't get what I want because I'm afraid of being rejected. Things like that. So Neville says, prayer is the art of assuming the feeling of being. So let's reflect upon this very deeply. Prayer is the art of assuming the feeling of being and having that which you want. It's an art. See, if we start to overthink things, then we're not going about this from the perspective of an artist. An artist sees a vision and expresses the vision. They are the conduit of divine expression. They have a vision and they sculpt it, or they paint it, or they speak it, or they sing it. Any kind of artistic expression, I consider life to be an artistic expression. They assume it, it's done, and they allow themselves to express it some way, somehow, and then it's done. They've expressed the great work. So he says, when the senses confirm the absence of your wish, all conscious effort to counteract this suggestion is futile and tends to intensify the suggestion. So we're not fighting against ourselves within. We're essentially releasing from the interpretations. Now, we get better at it with practice, and I recommend making this a way of life. And as you continue to make it a way of life, you will definitely have the calmness of mind. Because whatever shows up here in the five sensory experience, you realize that this is probably, some way, somehow, a aspect of my past interpretations or imaginal scenes. And I no longer need to imagine this right now. I can reimagine. I can look at the five sensory experience and reimagine it, reinterpret it from the perspective of what is true in harmony to the vision, such as a person can change this from, but it isn't meant for me. It can be, I realize that what I want wants me back. I'm able to look back at my own reference experience and reference experience of others and see that when they and myself have identified with these things, I always got what I want. You'll start to remember these experiences in your life as soon as you identify with that statement. Or a person might say, but I will be abandoned. The relationship won't work out. They can say, well, the person that I am right now is more evolved, understanding, and deeply connected with intuition. And thus I have people like that showing up into my life who understand. And as a result, we have a relationship, a deep mutual respect and understanding. I'm able to see it more so today than before. What if a person says, because I'm afraid of being rejected? Well, they could say, rejection is a thought process. Is there actually a thing called rejection in this five-sensory world, or am I giving the interpretation of it in imagination? What they'll realize is that's what it is. It's an interpretation. A person can look at what they perceive as rejection as cause and effect reflection for optimization data. So thus all experiences are valuable. Or something that will stimulate within themselves a connection of knowing what to say next. For example, in sales, when someone presents an objection, and we know that the product or service is for them, and it's a benefit to them because we put out the intention that we were going to find others that were going to play out the theater of building a business, creating products and services that benefit others, and they were going to pay fair compensation for it. We put out that meaning. What they realize is that, well, that objection doesn't mean that they're not interested in the product or service. It just may mean that I have a doubt within myself, or I have lack of clarity within myself, or something like that. It's within, what we're saying I am to within, something like that. And they go to the end. They imagine themselves achieving a business, making whatever they want. And what they notice is that they know the answer right then and there. It could be optimized, it could be help them overcome their objection, or it could be just leave it for now and the prospect wants to deal later on, or another prospect shows up and ends up buying not only that, but more of your product or service. See, these are kinds of interpretations that we actually realize exist in our experiences when we connect the dots looking backwards. And so if we don't have these reference experiences and we have conversations with others who share that these are the ways of looking at these kinds of because statements that we add after I am, it could be very helpful to us. However, if we don't want to do that, then we accept the end and we maintain the faith. And how do we do that? He says, prayer is the art of yielding to the wish and not forcing of the wish. Whenever your feeling is in conflict with your wish, feeling will be the victor. The dominant feeling invariably expresses itself. He says prayer must be without effort. So, what are the things that we could say to ourselves, or what is it that we could imagine? Some of my favorite things to imagine, if I found myself being reactive, is certain past experiences where I actually saw myself doing the thing. Or going back into the imaginal scene of the end where I am successful in that endeavor and identify with it in my imagination till I experience that feeling. Now, it could be just running it into your mind. It could be saying something to yourself. Sometimes I might just say things like, yeah, this is what I'm experiencing right now. But I know that when I get into the flow, some way, somehow, it's going to work out. And then I get that feeling that everything is going to work out. And that to me is yielding completely within myself and allowing the expression to happen some way, somehow. So he says, to yield successfully to the wish as an accomplished fact, you must create a passive state, a kind of reverie or meditation reflection, similar to the feeling which precedes sleep. In such a relaxed state, the mind is turned from the objective world and easily senses the reality of a subjective state. Now, this is something that we can consciously do, and what I would also like to add to this is we could do this all day long. By being more lighthearted, by making flow a priority. Watch my flow series discussion, because when a person's in flow, they don't overthink. When they say I am to something, it's done. They're lighthearted, they're more at ease. And when we're lighthearted and we're at ease, like children are, being childlike, it's easier to accept the vision as a present fact. It's easy to disconnect from certain kinds of thinking patterns. So at the end of the night, before going to sleep, imagine yourself as the person that you desire to be, or experiencing the end result of what you desire to experience after the fact. So somebody congratulating you on your success and commenting about how you were able to achieve X, Y, Z, or something like that. Assume that as done, and some way, somehow, you are going to get to that destination. In that moment, you have the feeling of the wish fulfilled. And we trust at that point that some way, somehow, the subconscious, and we say subconscious because a lot of things may happen in the background that we might not know of. But remember, it's stated in the Bible, when you pray, enter into your closet, and when you have shut the door, pray to your Father which is in secret, and your Father which is in secret shall reward you openly. We might not know the ways. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. Sometimes you can connect the dots looking backwards. Certainly if you have a lot of reference experience, you could do that. But if you don't, that's okay. Surrender completely to this idea that some way, somehow, what you want wants you. As we do this at the end of the night, maybe the first night, or maybe a few nights into it, I remember when I learned this through the auto-suggestion principle in Think and Grow Rich, I would read my affirmations in the morning and before going to sleep. And I just did that, and eventually everything ended up working out. What I realized is that you can do it until you no longer feel like doing it, and you just assume it at that point that some way, somehow you feel it. You know it's going to happen. It's a feeling. You feel it. And that's why I believe he says, whenever your feeling is in conflict with your wish, feeling will be the victor. The dominant feeling invariably expresses itself. So we get into the feeling by recognizing we are that person right now. We imagine it, we think it, we say it to ourselves, whatever it is. Get into the feeling and we maintain it. And that's it. And if we find ourselves saying, I am to doubts, indecision, fear-based thinking, we're transcendent to the thinking. It's okay to have those thoughts, release from them. We don't have to identify with them. Just having a thought process like that allows us to be more in flow. And then another thing that I like to do is just make flow a priority, because then what I find is it's easier for me to yield to the wish and not force the wish, and actually be in harmony with the wish or the vision throughout the day. And if you experience something that you would call rejection, you're a lot more lighthearted about it. You don't seem to be reactive and identifying, unconsciously saying, I am too, things like perhaps, but it's not meant for me, I'll be abandoned, I can't get what I want, I'm afraid of being rejected, but the facts say this and this person said that. It's okay if you think that way. It's just thought processes as a result of identification. Those kinds of interpretations don't need to hold you back from achieving what you would like. Aim for a more flow-based, calm, day-to-day journey. That way, if these things show up, you're able to see beyond the evidence of the five senses and see it for what it really is, in harmony and in contribution to your vision. So I trust you found this video to be helpful to your goals, your visions, what you desire to experience. Let's go ahead and conclude this with an auto-suggestion. We could say, I realize the art of assuming is just that, an art expression, vision into reality, and I am the conduit of divine expression. Some way, somehow, through calmness and yielding, which becomes easier each day, I'm able to see things into existence easier, faster, and from the perspective of Wu Wei, knowing what to do, what not to do, through the internal intuitive guidance that I receive within. As a result, it's easy for me to maintain the flow, accept the end. I recognize that my vision is a present fact in imagination, and thus imagination expresses as the five sensory experience, as it was before, as it is now, and it shall be in the future. Thus, I am my vision now, and what I identify with, what I say I am too, draws upon the known and unknown ways to bring my vision into reality from the feeling of internal peace, love, and calm. If you would like a copy of this mind map, the link is in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.